Hello, everybody. It's fantastic to see you today. I'm absolutely pumped for you all to be here, and I hope that you're as excited as I am for you all to start learning and having a good time. So a quick thing that I want to mention before we hop into the lesson for today. The first week might feel very basic to some of you. We will cover a lot of concepts that are the absolute foundation of learning a foreign language. Many of you will have already passed these stages, but we highly recommend that you do the assignments anyway and look at everything from a different light. You might be surprised by what you notice, or the worst case is that you get to review everything and set yourself up for success. So bear with me during these first few days as we do something that's going to lay the groundwork for weeks 2, 3, and 4 and make sure that everybody is on the same stage. But without further ado, welcome into day number 1. Today is one of those days that might seem super beginner, but we have some good reasons for it, because today we're talking about learning to read, or more specifically, how to connect the spoken language to the written language, because it's not always obvious. Why is something like this on day number 1? And it's sort of a funny story because we had this a little later on in the course during the first iterations and the building process. But then we realized that literally every single day hinges on the idea that you're able to look at letters and connect them to the words that you're hearing. And so the reason number 1 is that language learning is much, much easier if you can learn to read, or if you can read rather. But you can't actually read sentences without knowing words, and you can't read words without knowing how the words are written. And so there's a little logic chain behind having this all on day number 1. But what exactly are we learning? We're specifically looking at phonetic writing systems, which is to say methods of writing that are directly connected to the sounds spoken. Phone in phonetic is the same root as telephone or phonograph, meaning sound. And you might be wondering, are there other ways to write? And the answer is yes, but we're not focused on that quite yet. If you're studying Japanese or a Chinese language, we'll have a whole day dedicated just for you on day 12. But today, we only want to make sure that you're comfortable with the idea of looking at something on a page or a screen and understand how it actually sounds. So an example like this is in English, we have a letter B, right? We understand that it makes a B-like sound. When we see it in words like bed or habit or cub, it makes sense. We get that that makes that sound. And you want to make sure that these sorts of things make sense in your target language as well. In English, we use an alphabet to write. We use letters to represent the sounds that make up words. And then we combine a bunch of letters to make whole words. But as we all know, English is not very consistent. The C sound from cub sounds a lot like k. So does candy, but what about chance? That has a ch and a s sound. Every language is going to have these inconsistencies and twists and turns. We're going to dive into that more on day 11, but for today, we're kind of pretending that things are consistent, that we can look at the letters and understand that there is a way to say them or to read them. The Latin script, which is the one that we use in English, is the most widespread in the entire world. I couldn't find an actual list of all the languages, but there's over 150 different territories in the world that have it as an official method of writing. It's pretty easy to tell if your language uses the Latin script. If almost all the letters look fairly similar, but with a few extra symbols, you'll likely have a fairly easy time learning to read it. But just because the letters used are the same does not mean that they're pronounced the same or really even close. Not only are there some inconsistencies between how they use the letters, but languages also just have different sounds that they need to represent. Some languages add extra letters, right? So for German, for example, adds a couple of additional letters, and French adds a whole bunch more. And then not only are there new letters, but you'll also have to sort of change how you feel. The familiarity of different letters might also be changing, like a lot. Some great examples are some words borrowed into English from other languages. So tortilla in many accents of English is pronounced sort of similar to how it sounds in Spanish, with the double L, which would be normally a la sound, being more of a ya sound, tortilla. Same with the J in jalapeno, right? Sorry for all the Spanish examples, by the way, in the course. It's the language I'm most familiar with, but this applies to basically anything. And so it's these sorts of inconsistencies that you kind of have to retrain your brain to get used to. Some languages that you might be learning, the dominant way to write is not by representing these by representing sounds, but rather ideas. This system has been in use in East Asia for like 3,000 or 4,000 years. We call these character-based systems, and there are really only 2 or 3, depending on how you count, currently in use today. There's a system that's used in Japanese, and then the system that's used by various languages of China and some surrounding countries. Learning these systems is a big undertaking in and of itself, since there are thousands of different characters that contain almost no pronunciation information. But thankfully, you can absolutely start without learning a single character. If you're studying one of these languages, we recommend that you hold off on trying to learn these characters until at least day number 12, when we'll cover in a lot more detail how you're going to do that. Because even for languages with characters, there are ways to write down the sounds. It's needed for interacting with computers and a lot of other things in the language. So if you're learning Japanese, you're going to make sure that you know hiragana and katakana first. And if you're learning Mandarin, you'll be using pinyin. There are a few other languages with different systems like Cantonese, but it's all the same idea. There are ways to write the sounds, and you're going to learn the phonetic system first and become very comfortable. For now, just look at the characters and go, oh, that's kind of cool. I'll learn those in the future. But for now, your goal is to fluently read the phonetic symbols and get the basic words from that. And finally, this slide is dedicated to anyone that's learning any other language. So it doesn't use the Latin alphabet and doesn't use characters. And we combine them all into one slide, since learning a new phonetic writing system isn't that difficult. I'm sure it's going to take some practice and some time, but it's basically the same process for any new script. It'll just take time and practice. Just for fun, I collected a bunch of different scripts from various languages around the world to show that they're all very, very different, and they have their own history and logic and illogic, but are all going to follow the same idea as the Latin script. You could write down the sounds of the language to represent words. So here we have the Cyrillic script, Greek, Hebrew, Ethiopian, Hindi, Arabic, Thai, Korean. Your approach to learning these will be to first learn what each letter, not actual letters, sounds like, what the basic internal rules are. So you think about how like C and H in English combine to make a third new like letter, essentially. And then get practice over time by reading and listening to the language at the same time and increasing your recognition speed. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff about the different ways of writing. But today your goal is pretty simple. Connect the written language to the spoken language. Or if you already have a head start in that, check your understanding and make sure that you're remembering things correctly. One useful thing about having today's homework be quite simple is that you also get the opportunity to learn about the Google Sheet document that we have for you all to use. This is where we have all of the information, links, and resources for each language for the entire course. So make sure that you can access the sheet, which will be posted in the Discord right after this. Navigate to your language along the bottom. You'll see a bunch of different languages down there. You have to find your specific language, and then go find the information, the links for day number 1. Then you can watch the videos to learn about the writing system for your language. And we have a video for literally all of you. So all you need to do is watch a couple videos and try to take in the information. If you want, you can take notes or do something to keep your mind focused on the task, but you don't actually need to do any notes or whatever it might be. You also might not finish the entire video or all the videos today, and that's totally fine. All the homework and the database is about giving you the tools to start doing things daily, and so taking a few days to work through things is absolutely fine. If you finish it today or tomorrow, it'll all end up being the same in the long run. But that is the assignment for today. That is our what we're doing. So thank you all for listening to that, and best of luck learning how to read.